Hi and welcome to another stitching class for the Speak Their Name Suicide Memorial Quilt Project for Greater Manchester. You've been tuning in for several weeks now during lockdown, and I hope you are enjoying the workshops and doing some creative stitching to remember those that we have lost to suicide. I've seen some of your pictures and some of your work on the Facebook group, and it really is just really incredible. So thank you so much for joining in, and when this is all finished and our quilt is completed, you are going to be so proud of what you've done to raise awareness around suicide. So really a massive thank you from me. So today on the project, we're going to do some more embroidery, and we're going to do something that's a little bit more time consuming. It's not difficult, it is quite easy, but it does take a bit of patience, and I think you're going to enjoy it. Just a bit of my shout out on my book front, because if you know me by now, I am absolutely addicted to sewing books. So if you're enjoying embroidery and want to get some ideas, this is one of my all-time favourite sewing books. You can buy it online. You can get old second-hand copies for under a tenner, and it's the DMC book of embroidery stitches, and DMC are the people who make the embroidery thread. And this one is really good, and it takes you through some projects, but it takes you through all the stitches that you will ever need to do. It gives you a few projects. They are a bit dated. I think this is a 1980s edition. But it gives you loads of ideas of fun stuff. And as I say, it takes you through all the stitches that you'll need to know. So that's the DMC Book of Embroidery and Cross-Stitch Stitches. A really good one. The Royal School of Needlework is based in Hampton Court, and they are I believe it's the only college in the whole of the country that actually teaches purely needlework. And this is an absolutely beautiful book, and I'm going to take you through this today because the technique that is shown in here in great detail is needle painting, and this is what it is. And it looks very difficult and complex, but it's basically painting with long and short stitches. So if you can see, that whole background has just been done with long and short stitches, fading from a dark colour to a light. And then they've overlaid it with a tree motif. So it's time consuming, but it really isn't difficult. And you can do lots of things with it. Here are some flowers. And I do believe in here, that's a dog done in needle painting, because it does look like fur. It's quite an exciting thing to do. So again, if you're looking at another good instruction book, that's one to get. And again, you should be able to pick this up for under a tenner on Amazon. If you're inspired by any of the ideas in here, one thing I like using is colouring books. And this is one I've picked up for £2 at the Works. And it's got, you know, if you're looking for inspiration, it's got lovely pictures, and then it's got it drawn out which you can trace, but it's got a colour guide. So if you ever see any of these online, or when we come out of lockdown, if you go into any stationers, any of these adult colouring books have got some lovely inspiration and ideas on there. So where to start on this? So the idea behind what I wanted to show you today was a book called Pumpkin Soup, which is something I used to read to my children when they were little. And it's a lovely story about a cat who lives deep in the woods, and he plays the banjo, and he lives with his friend the duck who plays the wooden spoon. And every night they sit by the fire and they sing and they play musical instruments and they eat pumpkin soup. So one of the things I wanted to do was a pumpkin, because it's nice and easy to draw. And with all these projects, when you start, I like to put things down in paper first so I can see what they look like. So here you can see I've drawn a really simple pumpkin. You don't need to be a great artist, but you draw the shape of what you want your project to look like, and just put some simple shading in there so you can see where the colours change from light to dark. So these are going to be my dark areas, and then they're going to fade in to get lighter and lighter here. So there was my idea, and then I was going to put it on to fabric. I'm not going to start, I'm going to show you this as it's nearly completed, but to show you how to do needle painting, the first thing you need to start with is the shape. So here I've drawn a very simple heart shape, and to help me know which direction the stitches are going, I've drawn some guidelines. Now these are all going to be sewn over so you can draw it on pencil, but it's breaking it up into manageable chunks, and it's showing me where my stitching lines go. So all needle painting is a succession of long and short stitches. So as you can see, I've started at the top, and I've done a long stitch next to a short stitch, next to a long stitch, next to a short stitch. And you can carry on along here, and then when you get to your next row, you poke your needle in to split the end of your previous stitch. So you can do another long stitch, and then you can follow it by going into the short stitch and poking your needle up through the short stitch, the end of the previous stitch, and bringing it up flush to the stitch underneath. You don't need to be massively precise here, there's a bit of a gap, so I'm going to fill that in with a longer stitch, and then into the next stitch, and following that line. As you can see, I'm not being massively neat here, but hopefully you're getting the idea of how to do it. You do need to do this in good lighting, and preferably somebody not stood behind you with a camera. So you can do a long stitch, and follow it underneath, with a short stitch, and you just keep doing it in rows like this. Following your guidelines so you've got some idea where your stitches are going. You can take more time and get it neater than I've done here. Try and keep it as close as possible to the previous stitch. Can you see? And as you can see, that's starting to fill it in. If you want to, then you can fade through your colours. So if we go back to my pumpkin, here's one I made earlier. And as you can see, I've started with dark colours. I've got a dark brown here. I've moved to rust, to a dark orange, moved it to a light orange, and back again to the dark orange. And I've done it in segments. So as you can see here, we're coming up to the last bit of the pumpkin. And we've got a short stitch. Here I've got my dark orange and I'm fading here. Oh, it's a massive knot in it. Fading to the light colours. And a long stitch. And you can make your stitches as long or as short as you want, according to your patience level. But just have a practice, because it does take time. It's not difficult, as you can see. It's just really colouring in with thread. It's a long stitch, and I'm going right into the previous stitch, sewing into it. I'm doing a short stitch underneath. I'm going into the previous stitch and alternating with those long and short stitches. And as you can see, that's filling in nicely. And I've done the stalk of my pumpkin with a whip stitch, which is on one of the previous videos. And then when you're finished, you've got a nice motif that you can cut out and you can sew onto your square. So going back to our embroidery and whatever you're getting up to at the moment, one of the things that you might want to have a look at is using, somebody said to me in one of the group forums, I've got all these bits I've made, what am I going to do with them? And one of the things you can have a go at making to keep track of all the stitches and the different techniques you've learnt is make yourself a memory book. And I've done one here. Just get some plain cotton material, cut it up into strips, and then fold your strips into a book. So I've got some, here's my little book here. And then I've just stitched them with running stitch down the spine to hold them all together. You can make a cover for it. I've put mine on there. I've put a different piece of fabric and I've made a little heart, and I've sewn these on, and I've sewn around the edge with blanket stitch. And I just want to show you how to do a blanket stitch because it's a nice easy one. And all you do for this, if you take your embroidery cotton, now some of you have said, oh, I'm struggling with this, my pictures and what I'm doing is looking quite thick. Your embroidery cotton is made up of about 6 or 7 strands, and usually you will only need to use about 2. It will make your thread last a lot longer. So take off 2 plies and just pull them apart like this. Oh, I'm making a pig's ear of this. So take those apart and just use those 2 single strands. So I'm going to take a needle and I'm going to show you how to do the blanket stitch. The blanket stitch is really good for fabrics that are going to fray on you. So if you don't want to hem things, or you want to put some applique, I hate doing this when I'm being filmed because my hands shake and then it takes me ages to thread a needle. Okay. Oh. Oh. This is not working today. Sorry, people. There we are. So I want to hem another page of this book. I'll tell you what I'll do is I'll hem this little rainbow I've made. We did the chain stitch in an early class, and again it's another easy motif to make. I've just done a row of different coloured chain stitches. It makes a nice rainbow. It's another nice motif that you might want to use on your patch. So you stick your needle in with a knot on the end as close to your edge as possible, and then you are sewing up about 1/2 centimetre in. If you want to, you can draw a very faint guideline of where you want that to be. So you've got your cotton right at the bottom, you put your needle in to your guideline, you bring it down and over the cotton underneath, and it will pull along. So into your fabric, over the cotton, and just catch that loop like that. You can make these as long or as close together as you like. Over the thread to catch that loop. Into the top and catch that loop. I'll do a few more. Round the back and over the top of the thread. And that is your blanket stitch. So as you can see, you've got a row of stitches at the top, stopping the fabric from fraying, and it makes a nice border. Okay, so that's what I've done along here, and I've bordered the fabric heart on there. So you can put all your little projects in. So if you make your pumpkin, or you can make a heart or whatever you want in needle painting, you can pop it in your book, and this can be a little memory book of all your practice pieces that you've done for the quilt. So that's it today. That's needle painting. I hope you have a go at it, and I hope you enjoy it and have some fun. And as usual, please share your stuff. I'm beginning to see some lovely projects coming together. Stay safe, look after yourself, and if you want to chat, pop along to the Facebook page and say hello and let me know how you're doing. And I'll see you next week. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Cheers now. Bye.